common, they're pervasive.
Yes. All
They're
right.
just they're not just common, they're pervasive. They're all over the place. And that the more Buddhism grows, the bigger this problem will be. And that is that why would someone want to be a Dhamma teacher? I can only see two reasons. One is that they've got so much of the Dhamma that they're absolutely full of it, and it overflows, and they can't help but be in living the Dhamma, spreading the Dhamma, and it's good stuff to spread. That's one way, and that's the traditional way, and that's the way of the what. The other way is the Western way of going into business and selling a product. And that's the Western way. Now, here's something that's really interesting in that regard. Throughout all of the time, I won't go into the great deal of the history unless you would really like it. But there were pockets of time. One was in the time of the Buddha himself. Another one was in the time of Ashoka. Another one was about 200 AD. Yeah, about 200 AD, and then again in 500 AD. But the really big one was between 12 and 1400 AD when India was sending out nobles all over Asia, South Asia, into Tibet, and that the noble Dhamma was established, but it was established within the local community and within the local traditions. Hence, we have such a difference between, it looks different, between Zen Buddhas and Vajrayana or Tibet, where in fact it really is the same right at the bottom of it. The core of it, the nobility of it is the same, but the cultures are different. Western Buddhism was founded by a different kind of person. It got the first that we know of it was with Henry David Thoreau and Emerson in the 1830s. Then we have Alcott and I forget the group with Ledbetter and the Theosophists. That was the
Yeah.
group. About 1800, 1880s. And that's also the time when the scholars of Oxford, Riles Davies, I.B. Honer, Christopher Christmas Humphreys, rather, and that group started doing the translations and putting it into Pali, into English. But they didn't have several skills. One is they did not know the language that they were translating out of. And they also did not know the subject matter of what they were translating out of. And so that's why Buddhism in the West in the English language is absolutely so full of Christian language. There's not one need, there's no need to have any word that has anything associated to do with Christianity at all, and yet the Buddhist language is full of Christian terms and Christian ideas, including now this business model. Everything is westernized. And the problem is that it does not have the foundation of nobility. Now, that's not to say that there's no nobility in the West. In fact, there is, but often the nobles that are there don't speak the native language. That they are invited by the Asian community that came from Asia, and that the Asians know what to look for. They know what a good monk is. And so they'll go to their home country and get a good monk and bring him and put him for their abbot in their Western temple. And he's freely available and would probably be quite lovely in learning how to speak the English language. So he'd have many Dhamma students. But oh no, the Dhamma students don't go to the real nobles. They go to the business people instead.
Yeah, I guess because it's also difficulty to find them. Like I wouldn't know how
Because
to
they don't know
find.
what to look for.
Yeah.
The difficulty in finding them is to not know what they were looking for. But I'll tell you a little side story. The side story is that I was a monk in the United States for about 6 years, and boy, did I get my eyes open. Wow, did I learn a lot. one of the things that I learned very well, but I'd already practiced that in Thailand, was learning how to fit into an Asian culture so that I would be acceptable and wanted and liked rather than just an oddity that hangs around.
How did that
But another thing that I know that I came to know because I understood what to do within the Thai community. Within the Thai community, all I have to do is mention Bhikkhu Buddhadasa's name, and that will get my foot in the door with the right people. It is almost like a secret handshake. And because so many of them know Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, but I also knew which ones would know him, and so I wound up there with Mahasamsak at Wat Greensboro, North Carolina. He was there at a Cambodian temple because he spoke Khmer, and it was one of the largest Cambodian communities in the United States, with people from all over the Carolinas and Virginia and whatnot in the Cambodian community would support that watch. And I knew that he was noble because he was Thai. He was trained at Wat Po, and he was actually quite excellent in chanting. He was a master chanter. And boy, did we get a bunch of chanting at every panza. But um, back to the story, he knew of Bhikkhu Buddhadasa and that he, in fact, found the right connections for me within the Lao community, but I didn't even know it. You know, it's like they had their own conversations and didn't include me in, and then I would find out later. But more importantly, I had a young Laotian monk who spoke English but did not speak his own native Lao language very well, but he had two uncles that were monks. And his father and his own family wanted him to become a monk so that he could take care of one of the aging uncles who had ordained late because he had, and then therefore he had the money of the Social Security. So that gave him freedom to travel around. So these two monks became the emissaries throughout the United States for all of the various Laotian temples. Turns out there's literally nearly 1 million Laotians in the United States as refugees, with big pockets of 20,000 or more in North Carolina. And so I learned about, or let us say, I became friends with this young Lao monk and taught him the Dhamma, unknowing that he was going to go teach the Dhamma that I was teaching and share it with his uncles to see if what I was saying fit in with what they understood or not. I was being cross-examined and I didn't even know it. and that led to me actually kind of being summoned to go to Denver, Colorado, to meet with the other uncle, who was the second most important and highest ranked Laotian monk in the United States. And boy, was he glad to see me because he had no idea that it would be possible for a Westerner to have the noble Dhamma, to actually know what the Buddha taught rather than the magical version that all of the people believe in. So that led me to understand that the noble Dhamma was not just held in Thailand, it was held in various ones. I eventually met a Sri Lankan that was noble, a Burmese that was noble.
Hmm.
And so this is quite amazing that there's a lot of nobility in the Sangha, but it's because the noble Dhamma is taught within the Sangha. It was Bhikkhu Buddhadasa that started letting it out in Thailand, starting in the 1930s, causing quite a kerfuffle.
Yeah, I mean, even in Thailand, he's quite a renegade from what I've read, right? I mean, there's
You're reading
lots
the
of.
wrong stuff if you're hearing the word renegade. In fact, the renegade is going to be from the lay people who would actually be out there publishing things. So the whole way of gaining the data that you would gain would be biased
Isn't
because you're not talking to the monks. You're talking to lay people who actually write things and post and whatnot like that.
Ajahn,
perhaps even journalist.
isn't Ajahn
But
Chah's
here's
teaching, for example, still about rebirth too?
actually no. Ajahn Chah was very careful to walk a kind of a middle line. You see, Ajahn Chah was actually a student of Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, as was many of the monks in Thailand. But that during the 1930s, there was a search of the literature with a large Thai contingency to find out if Bhikkhu Buddhadasa was in fact right or not. Let's go look back at the Pali and go find is rebirth actually anywhere ever in the suttas? The answer is no, it's not there. Nowhere is it to be found. Surprise. What is there? There is a lot of time that the Buddha spent with Brahmins who believed in Brahmin things. And so he, in order to gain confidence with the Brahmins, spoke their language. Sort of like with NLP, they have the pacing and leading. Buddha was an expert at this. He would get their confidence. He would gain their trust because he knew their system while he was teaching them Sila, the foundation of Buddhism. The very foundation of Buddhism is Sila. And that's what he would teach to people, even who had not come to be his monks. But once they become his monks, he demanded a lot more of them. He demanded that they become noble. And in fact, we've got several sutras showing where he was calling people like a silly man, not a spark of wisdom.
Silly
The
man.
monk then is going to be drooping down and slump shoulders while the other monks are sitting around laughing at him with the Buddha. Downright ridicule. And it's right there in the sutras when people come up with beliefs that are, let us say, held over from the times that they were Brahmin. Now, what happened in about 300 BC was is that there was, because of state sponsorship of Buddhism by Emperor Ashoka, there was a massive influx of new monks, so that they kind of overpowered the senior monks, the teachers. There was not enough. There was not a correct student-teacher ratio, almost to the point of like 1,000 to 1 or something. So that the students wound up teaching themselves, and this is when the sutras and all kinds of stuff starts getting polluted. But the core of the teaching of the Buddha has remained alive and well within the Sangha all along. And that what Bhikkhu Buddhadasa was actually then finally accused of was not teaching the wrong or incorrect Dhamma of the Buddha, but he was teaching it to the wrong people. Who was he teaching it to? He was teaching it to anybody, or he was teaching it to the graduating class of a nursing college.
Which is maybe a chance in the West to step out of this monastic Sangha-centered teaching, and in the best case make it accessible to everyone, because we have less of that baggage, hopefully.
Surprisingly enough, it looks like Western Buddhism has, partly because of their roots, that you see the Western culture is a Christian culture. It's got Christian base and a whole lot of Christian magical beliefs built right into the culture. So that an atheist will commonly say, oh my God, and things like this. It's just part of the language, part of the culture is just out there. So whether someone was a Christian and then converted to Buddhism, or whether they lollygagged themselves into having no religion at all and then come to Buddhism, in either case, if Buddhism is presented to them in a magic way, they will take it on a first impression that Buddhism is just like Christianity, is magical also.
Yeah. For me, it was something like I have this. She's from Malaysia, but she was a nun for 5 or 10 years in Burma, in what's his name? The guy who does jhana a lot.
Ajahn Brahm.
No, not Ajahn Brahm. It was a Burmese Sayadaw. I forgot his name. Their technique is a lot of shamatha first, until they can get this white light, and she calls that base of consciousness. And then they start, I think, even with discerning past lives, they call it, to get the confidence that the Buddha's teaching is right, I think. And from there,
Yes, except that they
yeah,
missed a very, very slight detail. They
okay,
missed out on a very, very, very small, tiny, slight detail. And that is making an assumption about how long does that lifetime last. If you think of it in the terms of split seconds, then you're on to something. If you're thinking in the facts of hundreds of years, then that's just silly, ridiculous, magical thinking.
yeah, for her, she really says she could see like that she was, I think, once a samurai in a past life, and then other stuff, and that's what she, yeah. But for me, it was like, okay, like I've never, Apaok Sayadaw was his name. I see. Um, I was like, I've never gone that deep into meditation. I'm not sure what's possible, and I'm not gonna slam something where I'm
Let
not
us put it this
sure.
way. Let me ask you this. If you had a choice between being liberated from suffering and going into deep states so you could see this and that and have this and that experience, which would you choose? Let me phrase
Choose
it
the first
again.
one.
If you wanted to have a practice that led you to complete happiness, joy, satisfaction, living a wonderful, happy, wise life, as opposed to having a meditation practice that gave you strange, exotic experiences that were hard to understand without someone's frame of reference talking about it being reincarnation and rebirth.
Yeah, definitely
Which
the
do you
second.
want?
Definitely the
You
second.
definitely want the second one. You want magic. You
Uh,
don't want freedom. You want magic, huh? Guess what? That's the choice that most people make. But there is a noble Dhamma under there. There is actual freedom to be had, and part of the freedom is freedom from ignorance. From ignorance about what is and what is not possible. Freedom and ignorance about what is a story somebody's telling you and what is actually real.
yeah, it for me, it's because I'm just gonna play the devil's advocate here for a while to get this more clear.
Please let's do, because this is going to be important. This is such an important point for you to come to. And I'll tell you why later. Go ahead, Mr. Devil. I'm listening.
Yeah,
I
so
like your
that's
mustache right now, by the way.
yeah, I gotta shave that some more. Um, yeah, that because that's a little voice inside my head that sometimes says, "Oh yeah, maybe if you want the real deal, you would just have to go to Asia and become a monk, and that's the only way to do this for sure." Because there's this idea you have to
We're
go
living on
somehow.
the outside world right now. Let's turn that around and go into the inside world. I'm not talking about anything about where you go or what kind of clothes you wear or how long this takes or travel times or anything. I'm talking about when you're just sitting with your eyes closed wherever you are. Would you rather close your eyes and sit to be contented, happy, supremely satisfied, feeling wealthy, well to do, wise, and understanding the ways of the world? Or would you rather practice your meditation in order to have strange experiences that are hard to understand and that you want somebody else's frame of reference to explain to you what those strange experiences are? And one of the expressions is, "Oh, those strange experiences you're having is rebirth." But it's also possible to go to a different meditation teacher and he says, "Oh, those are just strange experiences that really don't mean anything. Don't pay attention to that. In fact, we've got better things to do rather than just go off having strange experiences." But now the worst thing about those strange experiences is not only do we go into states of ignorance about what those strange experiences mean, but we go around spreading lies about it. We start telling other people what strange experiences were, and then we interpret those strange experiences, and then just tell them don't even talk about the strange experience. They just talk about the results of the conclusion that they reached based upon some sort of model or concept. And so they just tell you, "Oh, I had this concept. Oh, I was Lady Godiva, or I was Cleopatra." How many people have ever told you, "Oh, I was a worm"?
Hmm.
How about this one? "Oh, I was hung up on the cross with Jesus. I was one of the two that was hung up there with him." That one's common.
Mm. Now, for some people, I think the rebirth thing is the motivation to practice because that means Buddhism is
Actually,
really a
it's a
good
motivation
idea.
to stay in selfishness. It's a motivation to stay in a state that has to do with several qualities associated with it. One is the
Here,
desire for wanting experience, lusting after experiences, spiritual materialism. That's one thing. Another one is that when people have that belief, never mind whether they have the experience or not, when they have the belief, then they believe that it must be some sort of self that is reincarnated or rebirthed, to where the teaching of the Buddha is to be selfless, to have anatta, to not look after a permanent self. Now, here's another thing about that permanent self. If that self is permanent, that means that it is subject to forces. One of the forces, for instance, within the Christian religion, they talk about the forces is when once you die, your soul is like a football, and God can kick you up into heaven and play soccer with you on the playing field up there, or He can have you roasted in hell. But it's you who's getting roasted. It's you who feels bad. The funny thing about hell in those regards, both uh, all religions, in fact, have a hell that is physical torture. In the Islamic system, they have it that they strip your skin off all day long, and in the night, the skin grows back, and tomorrow they just strip the skin off again. But they're only looking at it from the issue of physical pain, to where almost all hell is a mental state that people have. So taking it out of the physical world and into the mental world is an important quality to recognize that rebirth also is not a physical place and a physical thing with a physical soul to be reborn. It is mental states.
hmm.
And when you understand that correctly, you can practice correctly. Until you think that while you still think that there is a self to be reborn, you will never get over the first fetter of understanding your relationship to your environment in the sense of Sila Bhatta Paramasa. There are two fetters. The first fetter is personality view. Who am I? Who are you? And this is the reason why we practice with the Four Noble Truths, is because the Four Noble Truths, seeing the mind and how it works directly, we come to understand who I am as a process, a mental process. A process is based upon cause effect, that this causes that causes this causes that other thing. Wow, that big thing happens. Now we got a bunch of feelings about it. And now the feelings rot into wanting things, and wanting things leads to desperately having to have them, and then we're owners. And now here comes the self. But that self is more of a thought system and a conceptualization and a belief than it is an actual thing, that in fact is not even an event. It's merely part of the process leading into suffering. But if there is no self, then there's no container for suffering. You don't go off into suffering. And this is the way that Paticca Samuppada works, and this is the system that the Buddha worked out. And yet the rebirthers took that and made Paticca Samuppada into 3 lifetimes. Well, there are 3 lifetimes in there too, and they're in exactly the same places that the rebirthers put them. Only the distinction is that the rebirthers think that it's a physical body over a long period of time that has this thing, to where in the real world of mind, it's an instant past, giving an instant present, leading to an instant future. And all of this happens extraordinarily fast sometimes until we start paying close attention to what's going on. And we begin to see closely what's going on, we recognize, oh, all of my selfishness is just a process based upon old habits of the mind. Now, once we come to understand this first fetter, it also shows us our relationship to our environment in a physical, law-bound or rule-oriented system of ways, in the sense that if there is a soul, then you're subject to God. But if you have no soul, then God, whether he exists or not, has no control over you at all. That's freedom. To be freedom from God is to have freedom from a soul. The same thing is true, by the way, within karma. To be free from the karma machine, which is exactly the way that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa talks about it. The choice is yours to be subject to karma, subject to rebirth, or to be free from it.
How can you, like you already told me, and I really like this process of whenever you notice you're in a like tense state, or you've lost your mindfulness, to bring yourself back, have a feeling of success, a feeling of confidence. And is that the whole way to do this, or would you see?
Let us say that
that
is let us say that that's a hole to dig in.
Okay.
That is the correct practice to develop. That's the right skills to develop. That's not the destination. Keep digging. But that's the right direction to go in. The wrong direction to go in is the direction of believing in magic. Because eventually, if we believe in magic, then 2 things will happen. One is that we'll start to count on it and want it to be a helper. And 2, we wind up being victimized by it because it doesn't do what we want it to do. But with the real practice of the Buddha, when you recognize, oh, it's all about right effort. You've got to do all of the work all by yourself, all up there in your little old body-mind complex. And all the work is up to you. The second noble truth is really solidly real right now. You see, if there was rebirth, then the second noble truth would be wrong. But if you take the noble position that you've got to clean this stuff up right now, then the noble truth, the second noble truth, is profoundly correct. How is it profoundly correct? Because the cause of suffering is what you're doing right now, in the sense of wanting things you don't have, greed, wanting to get rid of things that are difficult to put up with, ill will, leading to anger, hatred, all kinds of things, and the delusion that we have of knowing that we're in these states, when if we were wise, we'd be happy instead. We'd be happy without anything. We don't need anything. We really don't need anything. So why should I feel bad if I don't have something? Now let's take that and put that in relationship to rebirth. Instead of recognizing that all of your suffering is created right here in this very moment by your own mental process that is swirling around greed, ill will, and ignorance. Instead, we add in the factor of karma. Now, all of a sudden, your suffering is not according to the second noble truth. We can blame the karma machine. Oh, it's your karma. That's why you can't get good meditation practice. And that's exactly the line that started the whole idea of karma in the first place, was the Brahmins way back when they were having trouble keeping their authority. They started to say, oh, well, we are Brahmins because we're better than you are. And we are Brahmins. And so therefore we are the ones who do all the religious ceremonies and you're nothing. And the reason that we're born Brahmin, here's the catch, is that we were good in the past. And you were not Brahmin, because that proves that you were not good in the past. In other words, you've got to take a low position and suffer that low position because of your karma. That cuts and destroys the second noble truth. So which one are you going to believe in? Rebirth or the second noble truth, or the Four Noble Truths of the Buddha? Because really it is that simple. But now in the relationship to that second, maybe I should slow down. I've had this stuff just kind of memorized. This is an old lecture.
Yeah, I had to think of sankharas, which I understand as habit energies or volitional impulses, forces maybe.
Let's change the definition. Part of the problem you've got right now is bad translations.
Okay.
Let's get a much better understanding of what Sankara is all about.
Because that also has an
First,
interesting...
we have to look at the actual definitions, but then we have to understand what they're talking about rather than latching on to one translator or another translation language that they use. It's better to understand it without using that kind of language. All right. The first thing that we want to understand is from the perspective of NLP, Bandler and Grinder. You know, okay. So they talk about mental maps, map making, and that the map is not the territory. All right. So begin to see Sankaras as the maps that we have been creating and keeping for a while. And one of the major aspects of these maps is, how do we feel? That we feel normally the way that we feel because we remember to feel that way, and so we feel that way. We spend a lot of time feeling bad, so that's a comfortable feeling place for us to be. The question is, can we start to develop feeling good directly? Most of the time we want to feel good by dealing with, again, the outside world. By saying, oh, I'll feel good if I buy a car, or I'll feel good if I get a new job, or I'll feel good if I get a new date, or I'll feel good if I get laid tonight, or I'll feel good about all kinds of things if I get all kinds of things. But when we realize, oh no, inside of that old Sankara system that is mostly full of bad feelings, has been some really, really good, spectacular times in the past. And that I do know how to feel good if I could only remember to do so. And so we can bring these things up. And besides that, even if you've never felt really good in your life, at least you know how you would like to feel if you did feel really good for once in your life.
So Sankaras...
So this is what they mean. The Sankara, exactly. The Sankara is almost always feeling. Sankaras can be thought, but here's a bunch of Sankaras that we can talk about in this regard. And I'm talking about it in the regard of Sita Sankara. And the way that I'm translating Sita now is the way the Thais translated in the Thai language. And that is with the Thai word Jai. And the Jai is the heart. We're talking about the emotional system, or the emotional part of the mind. The heart versus mind. Okay, you know that division. I mean, it's just quite common in our language. Everybody teaches that. It's common knowledge. So this emotional system, then we can start to identify it so that the students can start to be on guard for it. Anxiety, fear, sadness, anger, jealousy, envy, pride. These are all feelings that come up, but the ones that are really treacherous is like anxiety and fear. Fear is normally a little bit higher in the chest. Anxiety is a little bit lower down, but sometimes they're both in the neck area, protecting the neck. The exact same reason that the humans protect the neck is why the lion wears the lion's mane. And how does the lion, when it takes down the gazelle, where does he go? He goes right after the throat. So we naturally, unconsciously want to protect the throat when we're feeling unprotected.
So that seems to be why body scanning works, I can imagine.
Exactly. This is what the body scanning is all about, is so we can begin to pick up what the body is doing subconsciously. So that we can begin to come to note the anxiety and deal directly with the anxiety. How do we deal directly? Well, here's the way that we deal normally with anxiety. When people feel anxious, they think, oh, something's wrong, it needs to be fixed. Let me think about the things that need to be fixed, and I'll choose one of them to do. And if I go and fix that problem, then I'll feel better. So the example is the old man in the hut. He's laying in his hovel on his rack, and he starts to feel tense and anxious, having anxiety. And he says, you know something? I did not fix that fence. So he goes out in the night and he fixes that fence so that he can make sure that the goats don't get out and the wolves don't get in. He comes back in, he lays down in the hovel, and 5 minutes later, guess what? The anxiety comes back. It was not fence fixing that solved the anxiety. This is very common in humans now. And so we're almost doomed to follow around trying to do things about the anxiety by dealing with it with the outside world the way that we would try to get happiness. We try to get rid of the anxiety by doing things rather than directly experiencing the anxiety. To just watch it, just look at it, just breathe into it, note it well, become friends with it. Establish that it's there, and establish that while breathing deeply, it will go to a minor state and then melt away. And we can deal with anger that way too. If we can become mindful that we are angry. If we are mindful that we are angry, then we don't go like a bull into a china shop destroying things. We can say, wait a minute, and we can count to 10 or take a deep breath or do whatever we want to. And one of the things to do would be anapanasati, is get a load of what the body is doing right now with this adrenaline and cortisol in there. Getting us ready for flight and fright. And so this is a major part of the practice. And by the way, this is all laid out also not only in the sense of Paticca Samuppada, but I'm also talking about specific steps in the Anapanasati Sutta. Specific places in the Anapanasati Sutta of where to watch and when to watch with this bodily anxiety is when we're already firmly in a state. It's useful, valuable, and wholesome to do that kind of research, and that's the state that would be state 6 of Anapanasati, and then state 7 would be the actual investigation. So let's look at that state 6. That's the state of satisfaction. When you can get yourself into a state that you like so well that you really want to maintain it, and so you'll be on guard to anything to make sure that it doesn't get you out of that state. That state then would then be called first jhana when and if it's got all the factors brought together. And the feeling of success, the feeling of being a winner, the feeling of being a lion is the rapture, the piti. And then the sukha is the satisfaction, and that satisfaction has a restful quality to it of having a job well done and completed. So now that I feel like a lion and a winner, now I can relax into a state of satisfaction, and now I can maintain that satisfaction by not allowing any of the old sankharas to come up in the form of kilesa. And as I can practice this more and more and more often, I will be more and more capable of living in the present moment rather than in the past and in the future. Because the mind body work together. When the feelings are there in a certain way, then the mind will have certain kinds of thoughts. And what we're wanting to train for is to have the mind in a state where the thoughts are genuinely wholesome, and to keep the mind free from thoughts that are genuinely unwholesome. What are unwholesome thoughts? Well, one of the unwholesome thoughts, one of the qualities of an unwholesome thought would be that it would drag you out of this state of satisfaction. For instance, doubt. Doubt about, is this satisfying enough or not? If it's not, if you have doubt about it's satisfying enough or not, it's not satisfying enough, and bango, you just lost it. So keeping thoughts away of the past, keeping thoughts away of the future, keeping thoughts away of restlessness or jobs to do, and then later we begin to take away the more emotional thoughts of anxiety, anger, fear, restlessness, the very deep stuff, the sense of loss when we feel that we've lost something. Like, for instance, when a meditation teacher gets caught with his pants down, he feels at a loss. He's lost. I mean, it's just an empty, rotten feeling inside. Don't recommend it for anyone. But I can recommend to you, if you have such a feeling, what to do with it. And that is watch it, make friends with it, get to know it pretty well, see if you can begin to manipulate it just a little bit. But the important thing is that it does not control you. It does not own you. You are not its victim. You are not the victim to your feelings. You're the lion. You're the emperor. Now, I know that your empire is only a pile of dirt, but it's better to be an emperor of a pile of dirt than buried half in it.
Now,
And so this is what the real practice is about. And it really doesn't have anything to do much with magical states. But here's something quite interesting. If you learn to control your feelings, especially the really good ones, then when you go into these really high magical states, you recognize, wait a minute, this is not high and it's not magical. It's manufactured. I know what I'm doing. I don't have to get lost. I don't have to get confused. I don't have to start dreaming up answers to questions that are not really needed to be asked because I know what I'm doing. But when people are not trained well in managing their feelings, and when they have experiences, then they will have feelings that are associated with them. And then they won't know what to do. And so the mind starts to spin. And guess what it spins to? It spins into people wearing weird clothes sometimes.
uh, it reminds me of times I've done psychedelics, and at some point I realized all this stuff is happening, but it's kind of like byproducts. And the most important thing is that I keep a stable mind all through the experience. Especially the days after usually were very nice because I could just be there. I realized this is not so different from yesterday when I when I ate some mushrooms. It's just a different experience, and it's just important that I'm happy and that I do what's right now. Yeah. Yeah, anyways, that's a little tale about that. What I wanted to ask was about in Goenka retreats, they talk about there's so many sankharas to root out, and I think he actually even says it might take several lifetimes to do so.
Yeah, right. But how long's a lifetime?
A few moments, don't know. That has been
It's
a
not
bit.
going to take several. It's going to take many, many, many lifetimes. Every time you remember, that's a lifetime. And you're going to have to remember many, many times until you develop the skill that it's going to take. So the skill development has to be done over and over and over and over and over again.
That has been a bit discouraging to me because it makes it seem there's this huge store of sankharas and you have to root them all out,
That's
and you
exactly
never know
what's
how long.
wrong with the magical. That's exactly what's wrong with the magical teaching. That it seems overwhelming and undoable. So why do anything at all? Especially since many of the places who teach such things will give you an alternate. Oh, well, you don't really have to do anything except give me money, and then you'll have a better lifetime next time so that you can practice then. I'm serious. This is every religion. This is exactly what every religion teaches. You give me money and your next life will be better than this one. Just wait. Just wait. You have to wait until the bank burns down before you can do a withdrawal.
Yeah. So the alternative I see now is to say, okay, there is this big store, but I can still be
I
happy
can
right
do
now.
it. Exactly. That's the whole point, is the change of an attitude. Instead of being overwhelmed by it, you can say, oh no, I can do this. Oh no, I can handle this stuff.
Hmm.
This is what the word Shraddha is really all about. It's wrongly translated into English as the word faith. But a much better word to translate Shraddha into is confidence. Confidence is based upon experience of past success. And you know you can do it because you keep doing it over and over and over again. Just a simple example. If you have a Windows, a modern Windows like Windows 10, and every time you turn on the computer, it just boots right up. No problem. Then we can finally get used to that. But if we come from an old Windows to where it took forever to boot up and sometimes it didn't, and sometimes we had to do this and sometimes we had to do that, then that means that when we are using new Windows now, when we know it's going to boot up really easy, still we have that tension. I don't want to turn it off because I'm afraid that it won't boot up when I turn it on next time. I don't know if you've ever had that or not, but I do know that a lot of people who use Windows don't trust it. And it's that lack of trust. It's no Shraddha for Windows, where people have a whole lot of faith about Unix because it don't crash. Boots up really fast, boots up easy.
There, I feel like I know two trajectories. One is this: I'm building with equanimity on working through and kind of dissolving all these sankharas on the way. And the other one is these maps of insight that are very popular in the pragmatic Dharma community, where people they want to get to arising and passing away, and then through the dukkha jnanas, and have these also special experiences, I guess, these cessations, and then you cycle
All
through
right.
that, and it seems like two different ways of progress that I can't.
Actually, I would not. Yes, I understand, and you're coming from two frames of reference. Let's see if we can put those frames of reference into a better context, so you can see they're actually talking about the same thing. All right.
Yeah.
But when we say that the sankharas are going to melt away, that's kind of a metaphor. That in fact, that's not actually the right word to use, because in the sutras, the right word is to pacify, not melt away, but to pacify. In other words, that anxiety is always going to be there, but it's not going to be in control anymore. It's almost like a domesticated animal. really is a whole lot like a domesticated animal. If you've got a wild animal on your property, like a horse that's not trained, it's always a problem. It's always kicking stuff down. It's never satisfied. It wants to jump the fence. It wants out of here. Everything is bad. But if you compare that with a well-trained horse, then the well-trained horse is easy. He's happy to see you. Um, he's willing to do the work that's necessary, that kind of thing. So, what kind of anxiety are you going to have? Something that is out of control, that you're a victim to, or something that can actually be pacified and perhaps put to work when it's needed, so that you can write that email when you need to.
Yeah.
Instead of taking the absolute do nothing route.
Yeah. So it's not about fully getting rid of this or that emotion.
It's learning to pacify it.
Okay.
That you can use. So you see, let me ask you this: would there ever be any value in anger? And then take the anger out of it and leave that value left. And that
Yes.
would be what domesticated anger is. Okay, that you could be strong. You can tell your daughter no, she could not have 1,000 baht, not a 6-year-old. No. That happened this morning, by the way.
Yeah, I had a feeling it might.
So we want to pacify that stuff. Now the next thing is that, well, how do we do that? The answer is by watching, by investigation. That's the insight. In other words, when you begin to really see anxiety and see how you can manipulate it, is that not anxiety? I mean, is that not insight? Insight into the nanas, insight into your own feelings. But one of them is in such a stylized, badly translated out of Burmese method that winds up basically the biggest problem with it is that it goes back to the Visuddhimagga, which is back to the 3 lifetime version of Paticca Samuppada. So it's got some magic in it.
The magic
There's some
of
deeply
being
buried magic
status.
still left in the Burmese system. That does not mean that no Burmese can become noble, because I have met noble Burmese monks. But the way that Mahasi system has gotten into the Western world, it's gotten in as a kind of a vicious snake version of it.
Yeah, because a lot of people say it matches their experience, that there's these certain stages that they pass and circle or cycle through.
Yes. The question is, if you can actually see it correctly and deeply, why do you keep cycling it? Why do you keep doing a drive-by shooting? Why don't you go make peace with this stuff instead of keep pot shots?
I mean, I've heard people say that after a while they're kind of okay with it, and even the dukkha
Why
jnanas
be
are kind
kind
of
of
nice.
okay with it when you can be absolutely ecstatically, completely satisfied with it?
Yeah, I was gonna say sometimes people even say the dukkha jnanas feel kind of nice because they are in control, I guess. And then it's just, yeah, different sorts of feelings happening as far as I understand.
Okay. Let us say this. Maybe this will be useful for you at this particular level. Let me give you the distinction between 2 different English language words so that we can get a handle on what's going on. The first one is despair, and the other word is disgust.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's look at despair. Despair is a feeling of, I've gotten myself into a hole I can't get out of. I've wanted help. I've asked for help. The help has come and the help didn't help. And now I'm desperate and I've got no place to go and I'm stuck. And I'm 100% victim. Poor me. This is despair. Because there's no options left. All of the options have been tried. This can get so bad that it can be called a dark night of the soul when it is Eli, Eli, whatever it is the my God, why hast thou forsaken me?
Hmm.
One of the famous nuns that has already nuns who's already beatified and I think is canonized also, Mother Teresa. There's been a huge scandal around her for a long time that the Catholic Church, by using their own definition, should have never canonized her. The only reason they canonized her was because she got them a whole lot of money and built them a whole lot of buildings instead of using all of that money to do the poor that she was intended to do. She went out, she advertised, she got a whole lot of money, and then instead of putting it into Calcutta, she built herself a bunch of monasteries to train young nuns so that they could go and tend to the sick in Calcutta. But in her memoirs, it wound up showing that she was in a deep funk for about 20 years with the statement something like, I have prayed and I have cried and I have asked the Lord for guidance and I have not heard one damned word. And I'm pissed off at God because he won't answer my questions. And now I feel guilty about being angry at God. And now I go into a deep funk, a deep despair. This is what despair is all about. And this is not what is associated with Buddhism. That what we really want instead is the quality of disgust. When we become disgusted with dukkha, when we become disgusted with the world, when we can say things like, oh, boundless joy to find at last there is no happiness in the world. There is no reason to go shopping at Tesco. Absolutely no joy is to be found there.
Hmm.
When we come to that, we really do understand that quality that was back to that point that I was about to get into, was that second better. Our relationship to the world is what is in the Pali is referred to as silabata paramasa, and that word translates into attachments to or clinging to rites, rules, rituals, and we can also add procedures, way of doing things, what the society expects. And that can be in a really big way because the society expects you to go to school, get a bunch of degrees, go to work, be a good boy, fit into this society while at the same time climbing the social ladder, get better, get more, etc. That's what this society demands upon you. And if you're a good little you'll do what your laws, rules, rights, and rituals tell you to do. But if you find out, wait a minute, there ain't no self here, I'm just a process, and I can begin to process the way that I want to, and I do not have to follow anybody's rights, rules, laws, reasons, rituals, or anything. That I can go by a better rule. And that better rule is to stay out of trouble. Dukkha Nirodha, just simply stay out of trouble. Well, the best way to stay out of trouble is don't do anything.
Hmm.
And so now you're beginning to see the basis of where this Buddhism really is that it's in the sense of relief, relaxation. There's nothing to attain. There is no formal states of meditation worth having.
Can you hear me? So
Oh, you're back. Okay.
Yeah, last thing I heard was relief, and there's no formal states worth having.
Yeah, there's no meditation states worth having if you want them. If they are a desire and you want them, then that's a source of suffering. If you're satisfied, completely satisfied, overwhelmingly, joyfully satisfied to not bother with any of that crap, then you can see that stuff for what it is. It is dukkha. Wanting things you don't have, wanting experiences that you don't have, and not only that, the worst of it is now that I've had it one time, I want it again. Yet another one. Oh, 30 past lives are not enough. The Buddha had 100,000. I want them, I want them, I want them. Because basically at this level, people are looking for bragging rights.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good word in that context, I think. Yeah.
They're looking for bragging rights, and there's a good reason for wanting bragging rights. I mean, that's what every politician does. That's what every salesman does, is he hawks his ware. So if you're out there making money off of the Dhamma, then you want to have some really spectacular experiences that you can advertise.
Hmm. Do they, like, now you mentioned despair and disgust, which are two of the steps of this map of insight.
Okay. So
Uh,
disgust, we really want to work with that disgust to become disgusted. That's actually a pleasurable point to be in. Despair is not a pleasurable place to be. But becoming happily disgusted with dukkha, that's quite an insight.
yeah, I've never saw it that way. Hmm.
Imagine the farmer walking down through the pasture with the cow pies, and he's got rubber boots on, but one of the things that he doesn't really want to do is step into cow pies. And the whole place is littered with them. In order for him to get down to the other side of the pasture to do whatever he wants to do down there, he's got to walk through that pasture. He's got to watch every step. And he's happily watching every step. He's not going to he's not going to step in even one of those cow pies. He might even have to jump. But he's willing to do that in order to get the job done.
Hmm.
And he's not worried about those cow pies at all. They're just dukkha. And as long as you can see it there it is. I see you. I'm disgusted with it. That's why I pay attention. I don't want it all over my boots.
Okay. Is there any more logic to the sequence to, like, after disgust, I think soon?
No, I would not try to put it into that. And here's the reason why. Again, the Western mind is looking for a sequence of events. They're trying to put structure. They're trying to find patterns to match.
Hmm.
But the Buddha was very clear about this in the sense that defilements are adventitious. They will come up when they have an advantage to do so, based upon cause and effect, which means they're not going to happen in order. Now, that sequence that you're reading out of that old book may have happened to one or two people back then. In fact, that may have been the order of the day, and everybody kind of did it that way because they were all from that particular village or society or whatever. But you can't count on it being in that order and in that way. In fact, the really interesting is when they put the Four Noble Truths way up there at step 12. When in fact we should be introducing the Four Noble Truths with the first talk, not at some step 12 way up there high and mighty. And that the students should start paying attention to the Four Noble Truths right from the very beginning. That here's the point that's so important for everyone to remember, and that is that the Buddha's teaching is good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end. Which means that it's not going to follow some path that goes up and then down and then up and then down like that 16 steps of insight does. That it's good in the beginning. So that means that whatever we can see when those adventures defilements come up, because a lot of students can't see anxiety when it comes up, but they can see the thoughts that they have that want them to go do something, and they say, never mind, I'm going to sit here and enjoy myself. I am not going to get up and fix and to make sure the refrigerator is plugged in or whatever it is. That there really is nothing to do. And so the insights come in that regard. They come according to their occurrence, their timing. Later, when you're sharper, when you're more attuned, when you really, really have a very, very high level of satisfaction, and you want to make sure that that is maintained, then that high state of satisfaction is going to be able to see anxiety when it pops up. Oh, there you are. I've seen you before. Then they begin to understand, wait a minute, it's got a path, it's got a pattern. An example of that would be one student came and said that, whenever I finish a conversation with one of my workmates, my shoulders are really tense. Well, that was the first clue. So now we put it, okay, now you have to be on guard every time you start to have a conversation with someone. You start watching what your body is doing. You be here now. You pay attention to what's going on to make sure that the body doesn't get tense. Or if it does, then make sure that you're properly relaxing it, taking some deep breaths, making some smiles. You don't have to talk all the time. If you stop talking, somebody else will start. So just let them talk and you can just be happy.
Yeah. So that's a whole different form of more spontaneous insight, I guess, or investigation, which is more of a byproduct instead of decidedly investigating impermanence or emptiness or this stuff in your present experience.
Exactly. But you can, without taking it as a meditation object, impermanence, you can actually see, wow, everything is impermanence. Look, that thought just went that away. Oh, and that one went that away. And wow, the wind is blowing and every leaf is just shaking wildly here. Wow, this place really is impermanent. And then we put our foot through the hole in the floor, and then we say, wow, it's impermanent even more so now. Sorry, but that's the kind of house I live in. You got to watch where you step, or you put your foot right through the floor. It's got two qualities. It's antique and it's teak. You put those two things together, you get holy floors. So everything has to be moment by moment. In other words, you cannot watch for so that you can avoid the cow pat, the cow pie over at the other end of the field. You got to look at the cow patch that's right there in front of you. The ones that are occurring right here, right now, the ones that are present in this moment, that's what needs to be dealt with. And there's a procedure to do it, and that procedure is actually quite detailed. But once you understand the details of it and understand the method of it, that really has that quality of being in a really, really good, high quality state that the Buddha refers to as first jhana, and Bhikkhu Buddhadasa refers to it as a mind fit for work. And what is the work of that mind fit for work? Is to keep it fit for work. That's the job of a mind fit for work, is to keep it fit for work. Which means we got to do some work there to keep it fit for work. Otherwise, it'll just rot away. And so every time you practice, you want to get into a very, very good state that has the qualities of joy, satisfaction. It has the quality of being a winner, not a winner against other people, but the emperor of your own pile of dirt. Got nothing to do with selfishness or competition. It has everything to do with that big smile on your face. That's what it's all about. Can you become satisfied, and can you maintain a state of satisfaction? If that were possible, what else would you want from Buddhism? Or psychology, for that matter?
Yeah. Today is a family party that I'm going to with to the wider family. That's gonna be a good place to practice that. It's lots of people I haven't seen in a while, and it's
Excellent. Right.
I noticed that
So,
I
isn't it
meditate.
interesting? Go ahead.
Yeah, just as framework, I noticed that I sit hardly at all at the moment in meditation, and all I do is this daily life stuff. And basically, when it comes up, I think I feel a little bit guilty for that, but I would have used to feel very guilty for that. It's like I'm not making any progress, but I still notice these practical insights coming in, that how I'm working, how I relate to other people when I get tense. And I I feel like I notice stuff is happening, uh, and
Okay.
without having to. I feel like in the past meditation has maybe been something to retreat into. I sit in my little room and sit there for an hour, and afterwards I get up and do something else. And now it seems a bit more integrated.
Yes, that's the whole point of it. There is no reason to have a meditation practice if it's completely separated from your life.
Hmm.
No, we have to take the skills that we're developing in the sitting meditation and bring them into the daily practice. And you and I will work with that, as you call, in future times.
Yeah,
But
great.
we took the approach of this particular talk because of, let us call it, current events.
Yeah.
And we have to, at some time or another, begin to talk about magic, because magic is a major hindrance. Magic has to be put under the label of superstition, ignorance, charlatanism, shamanism, all of those kinds of words, and that they have a product to sell, and the product that they sell has a quality to it that has a goal that's completely unreachable. It's so unreachable that you can't reach it in this life. You have to wait until the next life to get it. Like I said, you have to wait for the bank to burn down before you can make a withdrawal.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
it's
that's
fun.
the way that most religions are. And that one of the qualities then that kind of method will set a strict order or sequence of events that it's got to be done this sequence in that way over and over again, like that, to go higher and higher in that group. And life is not like that. So anytime you set up a structured system like that, you've actually made something that's kind of unattainable.
Hmm.
That someone should absolutely be at step 10, but they think that they should be at step 2. And they say, well, I'm not ready for step 10. Well, step 10 is happening. It's slapping you in the face. It's high time you do something about it right now.
Hmm.
So this is called the natural approach. And the natural approach looks at it from the sense that we do not want too much concentration, because we want to be here for it. We do not want to be so solidly focused on a tiny little thing that we're missing out on 10,000 things. Oh no, we want to be right here, Johnny on the spot and on guard for any of those 10,000 things that might occur. Well, that's an exaggeration. 10, it's closer to about 20, actually.
Okay. I'm
But it
thinking.
feels like 10,000 because each one of them is going to happen 10,000 times or more in a day.
Yeah, it's funny how you can get caught in this sort of magical thinking, even though you hold yourself to be a rational Westerner with a university education and all of that stuff.
It comes with the society. We live in a magical society. And the basis of that magic, let us say it has two aspects. The first aspect that's the most important and most difficult is I am me. And you are you. But a much more wise way of looking at it is, oh no, it's just we. That we're all in this mess together. And the Pali word for this mess that we're in is called samsara. Not necessarily so much of a cycle, but it's more like just a mess. But you can stir a mess. And in fact, when you stir a mess, you stir it in a cycle. And so if samsara is in a cycle, it's because you're the one who's doing the stirring. Otherwise, it's just a mess.
That kind of means that samsara never ever really stops. It's just nirvana kind of exists within it as this sort of pacification.
Actually, again, it's a matter of making it your friend, domesticating it. Make your good feelings your good friends so that you can have the good feelings anytime you want to. Start to learn to manage the old bad feelings in a way so that they're domesticated so that you can use the power of the anger without the ferociousness or the damage. You begin to control your own feelings because you're the boss as opposed to being the victim. So major point about the teaching of the Buddha is to change the attitude. And I can understand why he would say that and put it as the second item on the Eightfold Noble Path, his right attitude. And I use the distinction between the word attitude and the word intention in the following way, because some people use the word intention wrongly translated. The word intention is actually wanting something. It's future oriented. Like I have the intention to get up. I have the intention for a cup of coffee. So it has a quality of doing, and it has a quality of time, and it also has a quality of tanha, or grasping, wanting. So the word intention is not the right word to translate, but the word attitude is getting very close. Why? Because we want to develop the attitude of a Buddha, the attitude of a lion, to stop being victimized and playing the victim or being on the bottom, subject to bad feelings. If we want to be on top, we want to have the attitude of a winner, and the winner has the quality of being satisfied, but he also has the quality of feeling like a winner. That winning sensation, that capability, and it comes from being able to clean out the mind so that no matter how obstructed the mind becomes, no matter how many disgusting thoughts I have, I can come out of that disgusting thought pattern and come and be happy that I'm free from that disgusting thought pattern. I'm a champion of the mind. A moment ago, I was a victim of the disgusting thoughts. Now I'm a champion of those disgusting thoughts.
Yeah, that can feel a bit like you're never making any progress, and that it just stays a fight, and maybe it becomes hard. Like the obstacles become harder.
You're trying to make progress. You need to start learning how to enjoy the moment without comparing it against last time and next time. To learn to enjoy this moment uncompared. Be satisfied right now without saying, oh, well, I'm more satisfied now than I was yesterday, but I'm not near as satisfied as I want to be yet. That steals all the satisfaction away from the satisfaction. It's just feeling okay. We don't want to feel okay. We want to be, this is it. Gotcha.
And
Now, here's the thing you mentioned before we didn't talk about, and that was the word guilt. The reason you feel guilty is because you're setting yourself up for goals and then not meeting them, and then becoming dissatisfied with yourself. So whenever those feelings of guilt arise, you should say, aha, Mr. Guilt, I see you, and I know how you got here. Out you go. I do not need to feel guilty right now. I need to feel really comfortable, happy, and satisfied. Out you go, Mr. Guilt. But most people don't do that. When they feel guilty, they say they know they feel guilty, but they don't take themselves out of the guilty feeling. They feel that they need to feel guilty, that they actually are the victim. They're not the champion of that guilt. They're the victim of it, and therefore I've got nothing to do except to sit here and feel that guilty feeling. And by the way, I'm going to continue having thoughts in that train to make me feel even more guilty.
One idea could be maybe I feel guilty because there is really something I could be doing better, and this guilt is moving me to...
No, there really is only one reason to feel guilty, and that's because you're in the habit of feeling guilty.
Same with shame, or maybe at work.
Same thing with shame. You're in the habit. You feel shame because that's a familiar feeling. You know how to feel shame, so you feel it. Feeling like a champion, feeling very satisfied is not a comfortable, normal feeling for you, and so it doesn't happen often. But it is a skill to be developed.
I mean, there's
so
also some information carried in emotions, like maybe somebody did you wrong, and the anger then is meant to bring you more into action and assert your rights.
And so, exactly so, which means that we need to throw those kind of thoughts out because they're always past in the orientation with giving us jobs to do in the future. But the reality is right now, I want to feel good. I don't care if he did me wrong. I don't care if there's some job that needs to be done tomorrow or next week. I'll get around to it when I learn how to feel good while I'm doing it. Until then, I'm going to avoid feeling bad, and I'm going to sit here and feel good instead. You have to take your frame of reference out of doing into enjoying. To gain your enjoyment out of sitting and enjoying rather than gaining your enjoyment out of getting work done.
Yeah, that's a pretty big shift.
You just had an insight. Da, 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 da. But that's all it is. It's just a shift. It's a 180 degree. Instead of outside, it comes inside, and then it becomes a lot easier. So whenever guilt comes, don't think about the guilt. Think about getting rid of the guilt, becoming back satisfied again. Guilt takes you out of your state of satisfaction, so throw the guilt out and come back and be satisfied. If shame comes, throw the shame out and all the associated thoughts with that shame and come back and say, I don't need to think about that shaming moment. I'll just sit here and feel good.
Maybe I think I gotta get prepared soon for this family thing. But I'll keep that in mind.
Oh, that's the last thing that I wanted to tell you, and that is, remember that sheet of the 16 stages of insight?
Yeah.
Where on that list of 16 stages of insight does it says family comes in?
Somewhere between disgust and discrimination. No, That came out wrong.
All right. Well, this has been a really great time, and I'm really happy to see you again. Glad that you enjoyed your hike.
Thank
Now
you.
you can get into enjoying your life.
Yeah, and I wish you a lot of roars with the floor.
I
Rolls
don't
on
need
the
anything
floor.
you've got to offer. I'm happy as I am right now. Thank you very much. But I do appreciate the good joy and
All right. Well, I still wish you a good time and see you next time.
see you. I hope to see you soon.
Yeah. Bye bye.